Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma. I'm Nick, and today's topic is work-life balance.
Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern-day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them.
Well, hello, Kizma.
Hello.
How was your week?
My week was awesome. How was yours?
It was good. It was, yeah.
We've been productive.
Have you been balanced?
I don't. We're talking about work-life balance. No. Mm-mm.
You haven't been balanced.
Nor do I desire to be balanced, but that's my view of it.
This is a popular topic, and I think it's interesting that it comes up. It's so often related to like happiness and all these kinds of things. And, I want to share from our perspective, but I think it's important for the audience to consider right off the bat that this is something that I just haven't really, I think just both of us, due to our lifestyles and our careers, and it was not something that was really come into the conversation that much.
No, it really doesn't.
But a lot of people ask us about it.
A lot of people ask us. So we know it's a thing, and we know it's an important conversation, and it's an important topic, and we want to help.
But yeah, I think our perspective on this will be pretty radically different than what we've looked at out there and studied, just to get some context for this conversation. To kick it off, what do you think work-life balance is?
Well, it's actually, to me, it is easy to put words around the balance when it's inserted to work life. Like that is specific, right? When we just talk about balance, I did a Facebook Live, our first Illumination Live TV on Facebook, Kizma Wake, go check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. But when we insert it to work life, then clearly we're like, well, we don't want to work 24 hours a day. And there is a thing, at least in this country, where people are working to or living to work. Like, it's to my drive. I got to work. And as you know, if you've traveled to Europe, it's more like, I work to live.
Right.
So I totally get that perspective, and I totally support that, life is here to be enjoyed. Life is an amazing opportunity. It's a gift. And when we're stressed at work all the time, it's like, what's the point? So I do understand that this particular balance is very, very important.
Yeah, it really is important in our culture for sure. I mean, I think Spain's pretty much got this down.
Oh, dude, naps in the afternoon, Italy too, wine, naps.
Kind of annoying.
Stay up late and eat a bunch of pasta. Like, it's like they are living life. They might not be the healthiest, but having a heck of a time.
Kind of annoying for an American. I'm like, why are all the stores closed?
I know, right? It's
what are people doing?
It's nap time.
But I think that's pretty typical of our culture of this tendency to overwork. This is a topic that is especially relevant for women in their lives and in their careers too. That's when I was kind of researching this and looking at what's out there. It's a conversation that is typically more bent towards women and finding their balance. I don't know if guys just don't think about it or what, but I mean, I've seen a number of male entrepreneurs just recently, successful coach and speaker, on the surface, very successful business, way out there looking like everything's just fine, but behind the scenes, neglecting his health, neglecting his own self-care, neglecting his own boundaries for what he's able to sustain. And sure enough, dude winds up in the hospital.
Aw. That's not good.
It's not good at all, but that's definitely a sign of being just way out of balance. And I don't think that's all that uncommon at all.
Yeah, and even in corporate and work and management at many, many levels. So I'm going to kick it off by saying, because for me, it's the same perspective as when we're just talking about balance. And people ask me, what about balance and balance and balance? I believe a certain amount of friction is actually healthy and good, and it propels us forward. It keeps our pulse on, what the heck am I here to do? Why am I here? And how do I create a thriving, beautiful life? Like, what is my higher purpose? Like, if there's no friction, it's back to when we've talked about tamasic, right? Tamasic is that word for someone who is just lazy, indolent, not going to do anything, just watching reruns of Law and Order. So without any driving need or just a little bit of that friction, it's like, how do you want to make yourself better? How do you want to improve? It's really easy to just be complacent.
So what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that it's a desire. What people mean by balance is often a desire to remove that friction and to just have it be like a more like peaceful, like, okay, like I see it like people just want to be like, I've got it all handled and I've got it all buttoned down and it's everything is where it's supposed to be in its own particular place and way.
I think so. I mean, I think many people come from the position of life is out of control, right? If any of you feel that and you understand, send me an email. Like, life is out of control. I am spinning. I'm lost. I'm trying to get this done. I'm trying to get that done. Where's the balance? Where's the balance? In other words, where's the peace?
Right. Where's the peace within
And
it?
I think that is a more relevant question. Where's the peace? Because then we can definitely guide it inward, right? The peace is not going to be external. The balance as well is not going to be external. It is going to be a disposition of the mind, a lack of it or less attachment, less stress, less overwhelmed. It really is an internal conversation, I believe.
Well, I think that's the house of cards in everything that I looked at. It was basically set up it was set up upside down. So it's set up in a way that says, when you address, all these different things, and here's how you set up your schedule and keep your boundaries and all this stuff so that your schedule is a particular way so that everything gets the attention that it deserves and yada, 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 then that's what work-life balance is. And I think it's ultimately a house of cards because the world is ever changing, things are ever happening, and to expect that to be able to conform to your schedule and to your preferences is just a setup for frustration and disappointment and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
So to set that up from the other side of what you're saying is like, let's find where that internal peace is first, and then see where the rest of it comes, because it is important. Like, if you've got a kid and you're neglecting your children, like, that's not okay.
No, you can't do that. You can't be out all day and not see your kids, for sure. This is the 3D realm of balance. You got to get home and spend time with your kids. But back to its peace, but it's more of an internal stance of, I got this. So think about it. We think we're balanced when all the ducks are in the row. People, how many times are all the ducks in a row? Very few times.
The question's going to be, well, how do I find time for it all?
Well, let me get back to the ducks in a row.
Okay.
So when the ducks aren't in the row and when things are churning and swirling and it's going upside down, when you are stronger internally, when you have an internal empowered stance, you are better able to handle life. That, to me, is the balance. That's the power, and that's the peace, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So then to the time thing, it's never time management, self-management. Now, let's just take, for example, you talked about having a schedule and everything's in its place. Actually, scheduling and lists and tasks, knowing what you're to do for the week is a really great thing. But when one is attached to it having to fold out in that way, to execute in that way, there's going to be trouble because life is always changing. There's always going to be these insertions of your kids or your partner or work or whatever, this or that. So again, it is the ability to handle what is going on. Now, if the mind, as you know, if you've been listening to us, we talk about the mind as the house of emotions, and it's so easily entertained by all of these things in the world. When the mind starts going in different directions, it creates a huge fatigue. Would you not agree?
I would totally agree with that.
So my position is, at least, the very least, we start with, where is your mind going to? Where are your thoughts going to? How many times during a 60-minute period are you getting distracted? That's when we feel like we don't have time, because the mind is in the future worrying, or it's in the past with regret. And then before we know it, that hour's gone by and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I'm not going to get stuff done.
Yep. It's an abuse of time.
It is an abuse of
actually,
time.
and this is this really simple law with karma is as you abuse time, time will abuse you.
Oh, baby, smack you on the butt.
And that's rough because we are bound by the space-time matrix here.
Sort of, but we'll get to that on another podcast.
That's another podcast. But, for all
Not
intents
really.
and purposes for this conversation,
Time isn't
time is
linear.
marching on. And when you abuse it, it's going to wind up abusing you.
And it's going to stress you. I mean, in your day-to-day world, think about it. If you lose 5 minutes out of every hour while you're working, if you're doing the typical 8-hour, I know some people are doing 10 hours, 12 hours, that to me, we got to talk about that. But, how many minutes is that in every day? How many minutes is that in every week and in every month? You see, and then as we lose, it's like there's a depletion. Someone said to me, I feel like I'm leaking energy. Yeah, you are leaking energy.
Yeah, that's actually accurate. That's an accurate way to describe it. Yeah. So really what we're talking about is how it comes down to how you hold yourself in it. And that is what inherently creates
that's a good
more
one.
balance.
Like how you are in it will allow you to have more balance.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the ways that people go really wrong is they try to address everything equally. So equal time for this, equal time for that, because in their mind, they hold equal importance. And I think that's a misunderstanding.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is so much time for this, so much time for that. They treat everything with equal priority, and without actually truly prioritizing in a dynamic way, right? In a way that flexes and changes with the needs of your life, according to that week or that month. Then when you just try to give equal importance to everything, well, nothing gets the actual attention that it deserves. And so then you always feel like spinning plates and something's always going to drop, or you just feel like it's no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough.
Right.
Right. And so that just, again, sets yourself up for disappointment and frustration. And it erodes your own self-trust because you see yourself always making these commitments that you want to do more and then always falling short of it. So it just leads nowhere at the end of the day. So what I'm saying is really and I think it's in line with what you're saying as well, is that prioritization that allows you to create a more flexible sort of more flexible approach to balance. I think the common understanding of balance is that it's still, and I don't think that's accurate at all.
That's a great way to put it. It is not still.
It's not. It's a dynamic flow. So, but that brings up the really good question of like, well, how do you maintain that mental peace and clarity within that really dynamic flow?
It's constantly bringing yourself back to the present, which for the first 2 weeks, it's like an exercise, like tug on the leash, come on back, mind, come on back, come on back. And for the first 2 weeks, you'll think you've gone mad. Like, I can't believe I'm leaving the present moment. And then after a while, you find yourself able to be more grounded, be more present, get your stuff done faster. And all of a sudden there's space. Now, I believe that what happens is people are so used to rushing and having less time that when there is a gap, they fill it up with stuff that does not need to happen, like Facebook or Twitter or just random stuff.
Certainly not listening to a podcast, though.
Oh, please listen to the podcast. Yeah. This is good stuff to fill up your space. But it's a little bit like, what's that saying? The universe abhors a vacuum. So if you, for instance, go to work and you're like, I've got all of this time to finish this project without chunking things down, trust me, that project is going to take not just that entire day, but longer.
It's so true. Oh, man. I've been guilty of that so many times where I got the whole day to do my project.
Stop it.
And then I go to do it.
Stop it.
And it's like, oh, I can make that cup of coffee.
Yeah, right.
I can take a little extra time with this. Oh, I got a little extra time.
I'll go check
and
see how my Instagram's doing.
Exactly. And then before you know it, like all of your time is gone. You haven't done what you meant to do. You had way more time than enough. So now you're disappointed, judging yourself, and still didn't get the work done. So It's basically just a lose across the board, man.
So what I believe is that each and every person out there has a gift of time that is like at your doorstep. You're just not seeing it and you're not creating the space for it to come in.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So look at all the times and all the ways you're getting distracted. You're not focused on what you're here to do. You're getting caught up in someone else's drama and trauma. If there isn't anything that's going to negate balance and suck energy and time, is someone else's drama and trauma. Just stop that right there.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, because I had a really great question on my Facebook page when I was doing the Facebook Live, is someone was asking about balance of being in the world, the toxic world. And he used that kind of words like, there's so much toxicity and the world is sick and it wants to be sick. And I was like, okay, this is a heavy one. And I know many people, especially if they're sensitive energetically, or if they're really working to elevate themselves and they look around, their perception is there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Bring it back to your own life. Just focus on you. Because the more that you compare or the more you look, like, yes, make the assessment. People, train of truth, make the assessment. People are doing some very questionable things. Yes, there's evil in the world. Yes, there's bad people in the world. But focus on you. Focus on at what level do you want to live? Because simply by taking your thought flow to that, you begin to attract more of the high level people into your life, more of the high level situations. You will see less of the bad and more of the good, basically, because that's what you're focusing on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In the world, out of the thing is a really, this is more of like a spiritual life balance. Mm-hmm. And I've seen so many people that get caught up in spirituality and spiritual practices that totally take them out of the world. Yeah. And they love it. Like, who wouldn't want to like just bliss out like that, but then they have a really tough time coming back in. So this constant sort of dance of being in and out at the same time is ultimately how we embody spiritual energy and spirituality in our lives, in our everyday things, the mundane things that you would never think about, like, doing the dishes or, driving to work or just, talking with normal people about, about the weather or whatever. All of those can be, very, very connective experiences in different ways. But it doesn't happen when you're just out there in the clouds.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that kind of balance is, again, just pure objectivity. I think the name of the game that comes back to me is just pure objectivity.
The more objective we can become, which means we're in some ways extracting ourselves out of the current situation so we can see it from above. Right. It's like as if you just eliminate the taking things personally and just observe. And one of the things we were discussing the other night, right, and I think this is really helpful because it's helpful in balance of relationships. It's helpful in when people perceive there's negativity or someone is doing something to them, is that how many people assume. They assume another human is feeling a certain way or is a certain way. I think the example we heard was, oh, you might assume that human is arrogant because when you're with them a certain moment, they're speaking a certain way or they're acting a certain way. And maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But when we assume that because of the way we would act or the tone of voice is something we would use when we're arrogant or the body language, and then we make that assumption, it could actually be incorrect.
Right.
So there we've thrown off the balance of really a smart relationship and understanding like who's who and focusing on you. Like, remember, your own gig is to live your own life, not someone else's.
Well, I agree with that 100%. And if I could take and just kind of, I think it might be helpful for people to see how that progresses from step to step. So here's a really simple situation. You're at work one day, somebody, says something in a certain way and you have a judgment about that person, that may be negative. The person's arrogant. I can't believe they said that to me or whatever. And now what happens is, it is really simple, is actually you start to get ungrounded and you start to spin a bit around that because your mind is circling around that again and again. And what that does is, just like what you said, is start to scatter your energy.
Right.
And the more that you do that, your mental focus, acuity, and clarity is just not there to do the task at hand. And so time starts to get just disappear. Time just vanishes on you. And then you become more and more stressed out, which then continues to create that spinning and chaotic feeling while you have less and less time to get what you get done, which keeps on going down that downward spiral.
And thus you feel out of balance.
Totally out of balance. Like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do and I don't have time for all these other things that are also very important.
Right.
So,
little messy there, gang.
It gets real messy real fast, but I think it's important because it's so easy to miss how critical one little thing like that can be.
Exactly. You know? One little flip of the switch and the mind goes, and before you know it, you're in someone else's drama and trauma. You've lost 15 minutes of your game, and then you wonder why at the end of the day you're exhausted and you just don't have enough time, space, money, etc.
This is the state of the world, and this is the state of the human mind right now. Now, I wanted to turn the conversation just a little bit. You're a mother.
I am.
Your daughter is pretty freaking amazing, if I may say.
Zoe, hello, call home. Please call home.
Does she listen to the podcast?
I don't think she does. But if you do, it's time to message your mother. Thank you very much.
She is really amazing. And as an observer, you know, throughout that and participant in that process for a time of it, you know, in my own way, I've really just been amazed at how you continue. You know, even she's in her 20s now, but, you know, certainly through her teens and how you really parent, you know, how you continue to be present for her as a parent, but in an extremely unconventional way, I think, for most people. You know, as a business owner, you were a flute diva before that. So unconventional in a lot of ways. And I know that, you know, you and I kind of have that in common of a little bit of extreme lifestyles,
right?
You know, in a certain way. I mean, we're not, you know, too far over the edge, but we definitely lean towards the extreme side of intensity and focus on things that we're really passionate about. So as a parent, how did you manage that?
Well, I listened to Swamiji, man, that's what I did. I think I've mentioned this, and it's so worth bringing up again because I keep revisiting it. And this last trip to India, he brought it up. And Sunandaji on our last podcast, please listen to that, dynamic woman in a spiritual world, because she just, you know, it was so beautiful the way she talked about it too. I remember someone asked him the question, and he raised a daughter right in an ashram. Do you have advice for parents or whatever? And he just like launched on this whole thing about how parents are suffocating their children. They're over controlling and they're like, you know, like piggyback, you know, he's like, can you imagine if you were carrying someone on your shoulders for so many hours, you'd want them off. He's like, that's what parents are doing to children. And he went on, it was worse, and the entire room gasped. But he was correct, because the thing is, what I learned, the one piece that was pivotal, he said to all the parents there, stop asking your children so many questions. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I had a flashback. I mean, I loved my parents, but you know, it was the typical come home from school and my mom's asking questions I just didn't want to answer. So I just shut down. And I noticed that was happening to be the pattern with Zoe. If I asked her too many questions, I got nothing. So after that trip, I'll never forget, I came home. It was after I already took her. So maybe she was like 15. I picked her up from school. It was like the little drive, you know, the 12-minute drive where I was hoping for some like info, you know, a little bit of the goods that went down in school. And up until that point, I just wasn't getting much because I was asking so many questions. So she got in the car and I was like, I'm going to follow the rules, what Swamiji said. I was like, hey. She's like, hey, and shut the door. And it was like, hold my breath as I'm driving. I did not ask how she was. I did not ask how her day was. I didn't ask who she freaking ate lunch with or I just shut my mouth. And about 3 minutes in, she's like, hey, Mom, so like, how was your day? And it was stunning because she never asked me that before. But I gave her the space to ask. So, of course, there were times when we need to inquire. Like even now, I'm like, did you get that application done or whatever? But I'm so careful of spacing it out so that there's room for her to talk to me. And the other thing, Swamiji was just so right on. He's like, the parents, when you have a child who is an external personality and you're over controlling, you are unbalancing that relationship, by the way. If you want to talk about balance, you are way over the top controlling this child. That external personality will be likely rebellious. If you have a child that is an introvert and you're over the top controlling, they will shut down, be on their phones, and basically act like a vegetable. And I was like, oh my gosh.
How many times have we seen that?
And it really, he's like, think about it. If someone's on your shoulders and you're giving them a piggyback ride, when are you going to get tired? Just like get off. So it's the attachment piece. It's the possessiveness. And children have their personalities. Yes, we have to have boundaries. Yes, that quote unquote balance of what is healthy, what do they eat. But that's really done by leading by example too.
I agree.
You know? So there's my rant on parenting for whatever it's worth.
Well, it begs the question though. Busy life as a flute player. But your busy life as a flute player. Yeah. Your busy life as a business owner,
right? And
leading a community. And were there times when you felt like you really missed something important?
Yes. And
how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I moved. So one of the reasons I left Hong Kong, and I didn't have to move. I made choices for other reasons too, but I had a helper. They call them helpers that live with you and help take care of your kids. And they shop and they cook, and it's really awesome. And it was also kind of a mental struggle with me. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it, but it was needed because I worked full time and I played concerts at night. But there was a time I was like, I think like one of our helpers, Pon, she was really dear. I think Pon's taking Zoe to her piano lessons too much. I need to do this. So I just made a choice. I'd get home from rehearsal. I wouldn't have any private lessons. I took Zoe on the train or on the bus and went to piano, and then we'd go out to dinner. Like I carved out that time. And then whenever I was home with her, I was present, or we did things, or I just made sure it wasn't just like me on my phone in front of her, which is what parents, we got to be careful. Like if you're with your kids and you're feeling there's a lack of balance in your family, turn the phone over, like shut off electronics, be present, whether it's your partner, your kids, or whatever, just turn the phone over.
Well, that's something we've had to be careful with in our own relationship.
Totally.
As far as just, it's so easy to get sucked into there. And there are times when, you've had quite a day or quite a week, and it's just like, I just want to like zone out and scroll the phone or
speak
whatever.
For yourself. I just know there's a couple of things I got to wrap up.
I'm going to let you have that one. I'll let you have that one. I'm just going to say that. But where there is time for us to connect and we wind up on our phones, where it's like, you have to make that conscious choice to turn it over and to put it down to like, and it's, I'll speak for myself here, and it has nothing to do with you. But there's a moment of uncomfortability sometimes of like, oh, I can just be like a human being with another human being, with the person that I love.
Right, and have a conversation.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that I can do that. It's kind of funny that little transition there. But that's what when people talk about work-life balance, I think it's a catchphrase, but it's encompassing so much more because you're a parent, you're a partner. You're an employee many times, or you're a business owner. You have your own self-care to take care of. You have to, your health, your well-being, your mental and emotional balance and stability, your own fulfillment in your own life. And I think without a direct system of priorities to decide what is most important to you, what gets the weight, and where your time and your effort and your energy goes, that ultimately you are going to be basically just chasing a ghost.
Exactly.
So there really is some thought to be put into it to decide for you. And I got to bet that any parent out there would say my kids are the most important thing.
Of course they are. So I really feel, honestly, I promise, when you're with your children, if you say you have, and this would be tough, I get it. Say you're working late, you come home and you have 1 hour, rather than sitting across from them worried about them. Because I think so many of us as parents, we worry and we're fretting, and is this happening? Did that get done? Sit and look at them in the eyes and smile at them and just kind of be, and don't worry if there's a deep conversation or not a conversation. Like, really be present with that loving feeling, and they will get it, and they will remember that. And when there's that deep, heartfelt connection, Then when you have those days where you feel like you're not with them as much as you want, just exude that. And this is what they'll remember. And this is what they will then share with their children. We've got to lead by example.
Yeah, it really does come back to
Because I do
that.
think, that what a lot of us are feeling of the quote unquote, the balance is that, think about it, when we're even in the relationships we want to be in, there's worry, there's anxiety, there's overwhelm. So we're what? We're lacking the peace, which is actually what people are seeking.
Right. At the end of
And
the day.
again, it comes back to the mind.
Yeah, it comes back to that mental peace and equanimity throughout. That's the most important piece to maintain. It brought up for me something that I've been thinking about recently, just with some of my clients and in general is what actual intimacy is. I think we could probably do a whole episode just on this.
It's a good one.
But it is relevant to this conversation because intimacy is, I think, so often either it's physical, which it may or may not be, or it's this deep sharing of deep feelings and things like that, which it may or may not be. But to me, it really is a state of being.
Yeah.
And you can be incredibly intimate and not say a word. Just sitting and being with one another, that to me, or just taking a walk together.
Yeah, right.
And that's, I think, what most parents are really looking for. Most people in general, but they feel out of balance because they don't have that.
Right.
And ultimately, just like you said, it's a state of being. It's how you are in that relationship, and your own mental peace and equanimity is entirely
So
necessary.
True. So true.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think? How can we help?
Couple of tips. Well, we have on the show notes, there are meditations that are short, to the point, and designed specifically to help you be more present, be more focused, which in turn will allow you to have more of that balance that many of you seek, which is really, for me, internal peace. So please grab those, go to our show notes and grab those meditations. They're great. The other thing is, man, hold yourself accountable to the present moment. Really hold yourself accountable. Again, it will feel, it'll be really tough for a couple of weeks. Then all of a sudden it will be your norm, which is really powerful. A person, if I just refer back to Zoe, I remember watching her. She came back. It was for my mom's funeral and visitation, and so many people she hadn't seen in years and years since she was a little girl. And she just got off the plane from London, and we went to the funeral home, and she's seen all these people in Steubenville, Ohio, who were just really lovely and just wanted to love all over her. And she was so present with each person. And I said, you have a gift. Like, I was just watching her. I said, you have this gift of being with people. And it's something that we all have, but I believe we get distracted.
Yep.
So when you're with another human, be with them.
It's good. For me, I think the biggest tip that I would give to people is really understanding, number one, that balance is not something that is still or stuck or always the same. Even when you see a ballet dancer, up on the toes, there are a million little micro adjustments that are constantly happening there. And that's true in your life as well.
Yeah.
And so in order to keep yourself from going too far out of bounds one way or the other, it's really a system of, setting up your priorities and making sure that the most important things at that time get the attention that they deserve. And that may change from week to month as you progress, and year to year, as well as, as your family continues to grow and evolve,
Right, exactly.
So it lets you be in more of a dynamic flow and more in a dance with life, rather than trying to grab everything and hold it still and just make sure that you got it controlled.
Right.
Because I can tell you from my own experience, that's super stressful.
Yeah, for sure.
So hope that helps everybody.
Yeah. And you know what? Have some fun out there, people.
For God's sakes.
Life is an opportunity.
It really
some
is.
Fun. Gaze at the stars, look at the moon.
Sage words from the great and powerful Kisma, as always.
And check out those meditations on the show notes. And until, next week's going to be awesome. We have a special guest.
We have a special guest next week?
Yeah. So after this one, there's going to be a special guest.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're really excited. So not going to say who it is, but he's pretty awesome. He's a leader in his community, and he's a very well-renowned businessman, has just done amazing things. So excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome. I get so excited when we have guests.
I know.
It's really fun.
It's powerful.
Yeah. Oh, well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Give us a like and a review if you're so inclined. Please share the podcast if it speaks to you, if you feel like somebody would benefit or could really use what we're sharing here. We so appreciate that. We so appreciate you, and just hope you have an awesome week, everybody. Peace.
Namaste.